Dystopian films need a very strong world that viewers actually want to watch people inhabit. They also need a strong premise that can be sustained through the course of the entire story that the creator wants to tell. And whatever element of society they're criticizing needs to be woven seamlessly into a coherent, sensical plot. And unfortunately for the future of YA dystopia, the Hunger Games prequel falls short of all these elements. The first thing that struck me was the poorly written dialogue.
Ugh, that ingrate should be begging to chauffeur you around today.
What is that dress? She's some sort of clown?
It really stands out, especially in the beginning, as awkward and over-exposition-y.
Best cousin ever.
Future president of Panem.
Daddy not teach you table manners?
Maybe he would have if he wasn't so busy running the country.
The world, as it was before, is Panem, which the audience is already familiar with and open to enjoying. But the design of this world feels so contradictory to itself. It feels inspired by our world's post-World War aesthetic with its retro TVs, but it's set in the distant future of our world, and the characters have dialogue that sound like how 40-year-olds would write modern-day Gen Zs.
Have you tried this lamb? It's scandalous.
See his mother's outfit? Sorry, his ma's.
Oh.
Spill it. Who won the prize?
Shame on you, Choreo. Don't you know that they're starving in the district?
I mean, calling this dude Choreo? Like, I get his full first name is ugly as hell, but Choreo is so cringy. Like, why not Corey if you had to do a nickname? I do like the choice to make this film more vibrant than the others, since it's telling a different type of story within the same universe, but it's too bad this color didn't seep into the characters' personalities.
Dress a turnip in a ball gown, it'll still beg to be mashed.
This is supposed to be the story of the evil President Snow that we see in the original Hunger Games, the story of how he came to be that guy. And what we get instead is an introduction to desired redemption, then a bunch of lollygagging, and then he suddenly says he learns a lesson, and the end. Like, where's the character arc? It's non-existent.
Got the grades, never missed class. Even Dean Highbottom can't deny us this now.
We see his goals and his obstacles in overcoming them, and it all comes down to getting this Plinth Prize, which will essentially take care of his higher education and political ambitions.
A gigantic monetary sum given annually to a single graduating academy student who finished top of their class. The winner of this prize will gain access to the highest reaches of government, maybe a prestigious apprenticeship in the War Department.
This is literally his only option, and the only way he can get it is by being the best mentor and increasing viewership of the games.
Your role is to turn these children into spectacles, not survivors.
We see him putting effort into the mentorship, coming up with the idea to introduce the tributes to the country and humanize them rather than letting them be treated like they live in the zoo, even though they are still living in the zoo. But he doesn't actually do much else about the games other than cheat to help his tribute win. What the hell does that have to do with your viewership arc? Think about the first Hunger Games movie. Katniss and Peeta got this extremely fantastic treatment. They got a luxury train, luxury quarters, plenty of food, training and practice, fashion stylists, interviews, all this theater that works twofold. One, to convince the people to watch and get attached to the tributes and believe they have a chance of winning. And two, to convince everyone that the Capitol is extremely benevolent and not at all evil for what they're doing.
We salute your sacrifice.
That the tributes being sacrificed to compete is actually the district's fault, and they should feel proud to represent their districts and honored to be here.
It's an honor representing my district.
Snow's arc in the prequel does nothing to develop this innate idea of hope and propaganda apart from the tiny suggestion of doing brief interviews the night before. Nothing to show the beginning of the thread that would lead to the superficial royalty treatment the tributes get in the first film. This Snow and that Snow are two different people. It's like night and day. And look, we can see moments where he's talking about the rebels being bad guys and the idea of giving people something to root for.
Someone to root for and someone to root against.
But that's it. No development. There's also the argument that he's actually been that evil guy all along, but again, we literally only see this a couple times with him willing to kill to get what he wants.
Fueled with the terror of becoming prey, see how quickly we become predator? All your fine manners stripped away in the blink of an eye. It's essential you accept what human beings are and what it takes to control them.
That has nothing to do with his attitudes towards the games and attaining viewership. By the end of this movie, Snow is the exact same person he was when he started. We're supposed to believe he underwent a massive change because of that little monologue he gave Gaul at the end going,
I used to think that the Hunger Games were punishment for the districts. Then I thought they served as a warning to us here in the capital about the threat the districts posed. Now I know the whole world is an arena, and we need the Hunger Games to remind us all who we truly are.
Bitch, you didn't learn anything. You got a rush from killing one dude and realize you'll do anything to survive, and therefore you now understand the game should be held as, what, a mercy to avoid war and even more loss of life? Shouldn't that be propaganda you come up with rather than something you learn and genuinely believe?
Her entire species must be eradicated.
Her species, sir?
The other victors. Because of her, they all pose a threat.
The President Snow we know from the Hunger Games movies is one that believes in controlling the districts by giving them a little bit of hope. False hope. Digging into their heartstrings.
I mean, if we just wanted to intimidate the districts, why not round up 24 of them at random and execute them all at once? Hope. It is the only thing stronger than fear. A little hope is effective. A lot of hope is dangerous. A spark is fine, as long as it's contained. So, contain it.
But in the prequel, he's asked
Why not stage executions?
and his answer that he learns by the end of the movie is that they need to remind people they're violent animals? That has nothing to do with getting people to watch the games or refrain from rebellion. Maybe it convinces the Capitol's constituency because it shows how violent the rebels can get, when forced of course. Or maybe it convinces the districts that they can never rally together if they're always fighting each other, and they progress deeper into the mindset that it's every district for themselves. But rather than making these points and weaving them into the storyline, we just have him tell Gaul a generic lesson he learned by being a killer himself.
Maybe we should be viewing those tributes as human beings. If we need people to watch, we should be letting them get closer to the tributes before the games, to make the stakes personal.
Who will watch the games if they care what happens to the tributes?
Everyone, if they thought the tribute they cared about had a chance of winning.
If 18-year-old Snow already has these brilliant ideas from the get-go, then you could have kept Snow as this calculating person and then also made him genuinely passionate about creating the best possible games he can, rather than just a means to get the plinth prize, because he sees the game's power, or have him learn the power as he sees the results of his ideas. Ideas plural. Like, y'all could have had him doing so much more than, oh, let's get these kids an interview, and the sponsor thing.
Now, once they get your money, the mentor can choose to send in food or water.
That's just literally the mentors pushing buttons and sending drones rather than building the basis for what sponsorship becomes in the first movie, which again ties into the viewer attachment and convincing the Capitol's populace. Because of how little this movie tried with character and theme, they were totally doomed with the plot, cause my god, the plot. Ridiculous, honestly. The idea of the Capitol graduates being the first mentors was good, but then everything else was just dumb. I think it was a misstep to make Snow part of a family fallen from grace trying to get back in the Capitol's good graces. Colin should have had his father directly come up with the games rather than taking his friend's drunken ideas to Viola Davis, whose performance yet again carried a piece of work with extremely inferior writing. And yes, that's a diss on How to Get Away with Turd-er. I guess this part is more personal opinion, but I think it makes for a better story to have the Snow family be directly responsible for inventing and creating and running the games, and it also makes sense thematically. In addition to this, the rest of the plot is extremely random and convoluted. Like after all the drawn-out setup and the comparatively short games, this man's suddenly in District 12 plotting with the rebels by accident, and then he gets his old friend killed for treason to win favor with Gaul, while also killing someone for no reason rather than being a snitch like he was with Sejanus. Then he's thinking of running away and spends time sitting around with this girl doing nothing, but then he finds the only piece of evidence incriminating him and suddenly everything's all okay. Dude, what? All of this could have been avoided so easily if it wasn't just in there to pad the runtime. I'm aware that this film sticks pretty close to the book from people who've read it, and I'm not surprised because of how badly this movie drags and does whatever it wants whenever it wants without any regard for thematic flow. When constructing a plot, you need to keep the characters in mind, and since they had no idea who Snow was or what the hell to do with him, they just mashed up a bunch of random elements and called it a day. And speaking of random elements, the songs. Corny as hell. When Katniss sang in the first Hunger Games, it was really powerful and emotive. In this movie, I had to skip every time someone sang because I cringed so hard, and the lyrics were written poorly as well. They really thought that first song at the Reaping was going to be their little home is behind moment, but it did not work. When Pippin sings that, juxtaposed with the fall of Osgiliath,
home is behind, the world ahead.
When Katniss sang Deep in the Meadow over Rue's body,
Deep in the meadow, under the willow.
When Thorin sang Misty Mountains Cold with the only dwarves who showed up to get their home back,
Far over the misty mountains cold.
These all felt natural and powerful and like they had a purpose. When a literal child plus half the lower class of Port Royal sang Heave ho, thieves and beggars, never shall we die, while they were in line to get hanged for opposing the colonial power, I mean the literal shivers that sends through your spine. Like that is what powerful, meaningful, rebellious singing in a non-musical film is supposed to look like. They wanted her whole You Can Kiss My Ass to have the same impact as Katniss's I Volunteer as Tribute, which shell-shocked the entire nation, but this had absolutely no impact at all. Lucy Gray is such a non-character. She doesn't do anything. She had a personality, at least, but it's very two-dimensional. She's a singer who's caring, and she's a bit of a spitfire. The end. One of the producers or director or somebody said that Lucy Gray is more in tune with her sexuality, unlike Katniss, which is such a stupid thing to say because Katniss was literally 16, poor as dirt, the sole provider of her family, just trying to survive, and experienced massive trauma. And plus, this movie has nothing to do with Lucy Gray's sexuality, so y'all are just saying things to make the film seem more meaningful than it actually is. In fact, one point of comparison to Katniss that would have made sense is that Lucy Gray is dumb as hell. Like, why did you not run away immediately when the game started like Snow told you to? Makes me appreciate Katniss even more, because that girl may have been stunned for a sec, but then she figured out her bearings and got to business. And speaking of the arena, let's talk about that god-awful fight choreo. Ludicrous. You can tell it's completely fake. Like, did the editors not know where to cut, or was it impossible to cut around the obviously fake punches? And ending it all with the cop-out snakes that are supposed to be like the mutts from the first Hunger Games, which it did not have the same impact at all. And Gaul wanting there to be no winner unless the people begged for it, but then not even developing that one bit or relating it to the first movie's whole they need a winner thing, aka the entire reason Katniss and Peeta weren't allowed to kill themselves.
One of us has to die. They have to have their victor.
No, they don't.
Stop! May I present the winners of the 74th Annual Hunger Games?
Another missed opportunity in this prequel. The only reason I even gave this movie a chance despite my gut instinct that it was gonna suck was that so many people said it was so good. And honestly, I think y'all are just in a YA dystopia drought, because with every second that goes by, I keep remembering more and more things I hated about this movie. If they were ever to do anything related to this franchise again, the only thing I'd want to see would be Haymitch's game, which was a quarter quell with twice as many competitors, and I'd want to see how he learned the tricks of the trade to become the savvy but heavily traumatized mentor he is for Katniss and Peeta. But given how badly they screwed Snow, I don't even want to know how they'd ruin Haymitch. The Hunger Games parodied The Starving Games was honestly better than this prequel, though that's not even an insult, because Starving Games was actually hilarious in a lot of parts with interesting commentary of its own, like all the sports comparisons. So if anything, I'd recommend that over this damn prequel. What the original Hunger Games gave us has unfortunately yet to be matched or surpassed in the genre because people have forgotten what dystopia is about. Give us that super interesting alternate reality in a world different from our own but with heightened or isolated versions of our problems. Give us that striking societal critique by building it into the world and themes. Give us those unique characters that we could see ourselves represented by or siding with. Amidst all the bland sci-fi of the 21st century, dystopia has the potential to be a significantly rich and entertaining genre that exposes the general public to societal problems in a more accessible package.